Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Man vs. Mood podcast. I am your host, Will, joined today by a bevy of people. We are tackling a very, very important topic, one that is on the minds of many, many people, and that's toxic masculinity. I'm going to start on my left today. I'm joined by Gary.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here for my second pod with you guys.
Second podcast. First podcast guest today, Genevieve. How are you?
I know, it's a slightly different, vocal performance here.
Yeah, performance. I don't know that we need to use the big P word because this is not a performance. And last but not least, Mike.
What up?
You're going to keep doing that to me every show. I know. I'm in for it. Well, today we are gathered here to touch on well, first of all, we're together because we all believe that mental health is something that's very important to talk about, and toxic masculinity is something that we've seen a lot in the news, social media, and all of those types of things. We're going to get to that in just a second, but the most important thing that we like to start each show with is something that we're blessed, something that we're happy about, things like that. So I'll start on my left again with Gary. We're going to work around the room. Gary, is there something, again, like I always say, it can be minor, it could be major, something that you're blessed?
So, for me, honestly, I'm blessed and thankful just to be here again. I mean, just to be sitting here, with you guys and to be able to share something so special and kind of, that we're all passionate about is just, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, Eddie.
I'll take the $100 after the show.
I got 50 on it. Genevieve, how about you?
I was like, dang, man, I'm going for much more not as deep. I am super thankful that we just had a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
I know it sounds silly, but it's interesting being post-pandemic, post-quarantine. It's just different. It's just different right now. Honestly, it was such a busy weekend. And in the past, I would have been like, man, I got to stop being so busy. And this time I was like, bring it. Give me all the things. Let's go trick-or-treating. Let's go to the harvest festival. I don't care. It's a half an hour away. That's fine. I was like, let's go do all the things. I did do nothing on Monday. I did nothing. I picked my kids up from school and dropped them off, and that's it. But it was totally worth it. We had such a good weekend, and good. I feel like we have wonderful memories to look back on, and it was just fun to gather with people. It just...
I was going to ask you why it bringing all of that on, because exactly like you said, but I think that you just touched on it. It's because we've been away from that interaction that we need so much.
Yeah, and it was so fun. We did a trunk or treat with my church on Saturday evening, and my husband, bless him, he's just willing to do, he's a great builder of things, and he turned the back of his truck into the back of a ship.
Really?
It was, and we bought nothing. It was all from our garage. I don't even...
He's MacGyver, basically.
100%. And his truck is high enough off the ground that I was like, how are we going to get the candy to the kids? And I said, do you think you could build? I know we could. I did think about a cannon. Mike's over here yeah, throw it. I did think about a cannon situation, but I thought, I don't want to leave stuff in the street on accident. So I was like, what if we lowered it down to them? So he built this we had a rope and we would lower it down to them and pull it back up, and he
is MacGyver. Wow, you were right.
I know. He even had the squeaky. It was the coolest.
So he's
sound.
the one that makes all of us guys look terrible because we come in
most guys say that. They're just really. Actually, the guy that was parked next to us was like, so I'm not going to park next to you next year.
And this is the beginning of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm better than all of you. You will bow to my Halloween.
No.
MacGyver.
Yeah. The best part was several people were like, man, gosh, way to make me look bad. And he's like, it's not a competition. Yeah. And not, because it's not. For us, it was all about the look on the kid's face when they come up to the truck and they're staring at us and we're just like, arr, get into character with them and having so much fun with them. Awesome. And it was all about the kind of experience that could be created for the kids and the parents standing off being like, man, that was cool. And then it's we missed that. Yeah. We missed that kind of connection with people of
some normalcy.
Yeah. Exactly. And my sister-in-law was like, man, I just love how you guys like to have fun. And I was like, this is the spice of life. And man, was I missing some spice during that time. I'm just happy to bring that back in.
I listened to your podcast. I believe you fully that you are really into the zeal of life and engaging things like that because competition aside, and I'm going to call a spade, I would be like, I'm it's not jealous, but I know I couldn't do it, so I would appreciate fully the magnitude of putting that kind of work in.
Oh, yeah.
And even if it only took an hour,
And
thinking it up and doing all that and going out for the kids,
Yeah.
and putting them ahead of everything else is just a testament to what it really is about. That, like Christmas and things like that, it's about the kids. It's not about the gifts or all the other BS. It's about seeing that smile on their face, because it's worth so much more than money. And,
Totally true.
That's true.
and appreciating that is something that I think a lot of us need to kind of step back and kind of
I think
engage a
men
little.
could appreciate it too.
Yes, absolutely. Mike, I know what your answer is going to be, but just for the sake of the show,
I
what
bet
is
you don't. I bet
Oh,
you don't.
okay.
Ooh.
Lay it on me.
I'm actually grateful for my kids. Today is my daughter's 18th birthday.
Wow. So 18 years ago, this was a magical day for you.
Tell me it makes me feel old.
I bet.
Yeah, I think actually right around this time I was cutting her cord. So
No kidding.
yeah, she was
Wow.
born in the afternoon, and it's surreal. I'll tell you, man. Your first one's, I have 3, so my oldest is 18. Then my other one's got to catch up. But I think my 15-year-old just got home from school. But yeah, I'm so grateful for her and for the person that she's becoming and who she is, and she just has a heart of gold. And
Does she listen to the podcast?
I don't think she does.
That's even better.
She listens.
Someday she'll stumble on
She listens
this.
to country music a lot.
Okay.
So
Someday she'll stumble on this and be like,
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Dad really loves me. Even he was taking my phone away and telling me those boys are bad. And now she's 18, so she can make her own decisions.
She's still in high school, and if she's under this roof, nah, it's my rules still.
That's exactly what I like to hear. If I'm paying the bills, I'm not saying that I have to be a dictator, but you still have to follow the directions that
Exactly.
mom and dad lay down. So, well, with that, toxic masculinity, what a broad topic.
I was like, what
What
about
about
you?
yours?
Oh, my. Oh, yeah, I forgot. The host. My son played his first varsity football game. Touched on it last show that he was brought up, or he was on varsity. He actually got in the game, got to partake in a little bit of a beat down, 40-0. It wasn't a great showing. No, it was a beat down, but it was a big deal for him to be able to get on the field and get that feeling, because you go from JV where everyone's kind of the 14, 15, maybe the 16-year-old too. These boys, I mean, some of the guys that they played against will be Division I football players.
It's
Whoa.
so different, just like the strength and the speed and just
Everything.
yeah, it's crazy.
He said, he's like, Dad, they're a lot bigger. I mean, these are like guys. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, welcome to varsity football.
Yeah,
Anyway,
How old is he?
He is 15.
Oh, that's a big moment.
Yeah, he
Testing
doesn't
it out.
he doesn't look 15. He's like almost 6'2", but he
Probably what got brought up.
yeah, that, and they're kind of getting him ready for next year. But it
Awesome.
was, I mean, the guys, Hawkinson has a really good football team, and they do have some studs on the line, and so he got a little taste of that, and got his bell rung once. But
It's good for him though.
yeah, that's exactly the way I look at it. You don't know that you can't do something until you try it,
Exactly.
and and he can, and that's the biggest reason that you want to do those things, is to overcome the challenge and embrace it and enjoy it. So, and Halloween was a lot of fun too. Even though we didn't go out, and I don't have little kids anymore like Genevieve did, we went and walked around, and Derek was a ghost, and we walked the dogs every night anyway. So, go ahead.
Might as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
and so he won the contest for the tallest trick-or-treater, because like I said, he is almost 6'2". And it was just fun. Just the three of us, no kids or anything else, just walking around the neighborhood, and the neighborhood people had decorated the houses. Like, a couple of them went all out. I mean,
yes.
like Clark W. Griswold level of Halloween decoration. So
That's my favorite.
Oh,
I can't do it. I can't do it for one day. I mean,
anything
it's
is
such
one
a short-
day.
It's such a short window. Like Christmas, you can start decorating right now because Halloween's over.
Well, people start
Thank
decorating
you.
for Halloween
Thank you. Okay.
the day after Labor Day. Halloween people are nuts. And now my wife has a coworker who put her Christmas tree up on Halloween.
Wow.
That is
I might be there someday.
Yeah.
I might.
That's disrespectful to a holiday, man.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like the day after maybe, but see, I still think that there's Thanksgiving that we can get into that.
It's the kickoff to Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have the cornucopia and that kind of stuff for Thanksgiving, and then Christmas comes the day after Thanksgiving. But I know everyone does it differently, and the point is that you get to enjoy the whole time of year. We have to have something to take our minds off the endless rain that we're about to endure for the next 5 months, and I think that the decorating and being in the spirit is something, again, the kids and the big kids like me, I just enjoy it. I may not be Clark W. Griswold, but I give it my best shot. So anyway, that is what I am thankful for. I'm thankful for all of you mainly, though, because this has grown from an idea about a year ago.
Yeah.
That
a year.
Yeah, Mike and I started talking about it. I had come up with the name and the kind of a rough outline of it, and through a lot of BS and things like that, you just kind of have to get that kick in the ass. And Mike's like, let's just go. And
kind of rip the Band-Aid, man.
Well, I'd already built all the infrastructure. I had all the equipment. It was literally it was literally just doing this. And for me, that's the hardest part, because I was not in a good mental space. I wanted to do this because of the mental health challenges that I was enduring, because of some really hard shit that I was going through in life. And I knew that this would be a terrific outlet. Did I see that I was going to be gathered around with three people that I think, even though I've known two of you for less than a week, I can already tell that there's a bond there that I didn't foresee happening. I mean, Mike and I have had wonderful conversations and things like that, but to have perspectives that are so much different than mine is something that I really appreciate. It's why I like to, at the gym, just sit down and talk with, or not, I don't sit down and talk, but I BS with people that I have no idea who they are. Yeah. Last week, I learned on the treadmill that a lady's ex-husband tried to kill her.
Wow. No, Excuse me?
No, she was like half joking about it, but the guy had a gun behind his back and was going to shoot her in the tub.
So you're telling me that she's got, she has to have a sense of humor to cope? I'm the same way. It's to the point where you're like, wait, that's not funny, but
it's funny.
But
she was cool with it.
Oh my gosh.
He had told her that he could pull off a murder because he watched so many of those true crime things. And then she said that she was in the shower and she had an overwhelming feeling, and she's a believer, that God told her to get out. She got out of the shower, walked into the hallway. He had his arm behind his back. She said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, nothing. I'm just walking down the hallway." "No, what's behind your back?" He had the weapon behind his back. She says,
"And she just told you all this?"
So she kind of has a little thing for me. She tells me to flex my muscles and stuff for her. She's an older gal. I have a lot of fun with her.
Well.
No, she gets on the machine behind me, and when I jump on the treadmill, she said, "Now you make sure you flex those muscles for me, so I got something to look at."
Oh my gosh.
She is just a hoot.
Did she ask for tickets?
For tickets to the gun show? No, she has not.
Where are you going with this?
I was like, tickets?
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
so
man.
I have known her. I've just chatted with her, but she's she's probably in mid-60s. She's going to get her motorcycle license. She's just, life is what she's here for. Doesn't have a dollar to her name and couldn't care less.
Oh, that's cool.
And anyway, so she shared that with me. I'm like, that's really learning something about. And then I have a whole bunch of other stories that would be good for another time, because this guy is crazy. But
hopefully
anyway,
he's in jail. Hopefully he's in jail.
No, she didn't.
So he's never actually gone forward with anything.
No, he didn't.
Well, I mean, how close do you have to be? I mean, he had the weapon behind his back.
There is such a thing as intent.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be a kind of a tough thing to prove. But this guy moved to Iowa, she said.
Good. Okay.
Because the gal that he had been cheating on her with said that she would perform a particular act every day on him. After a week, she quit and he moved back.
Wow.
So, and that's 2 of the probably 7 stories I heard on the treadmill last week. Anyway.
So the gym.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh
it's a
no,
magical
I
place.
learn all kinds of cool
Well,
things about people.
And now's a great time to do
Yeah.
our spot for
Toxic.
Abe.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, Abe. Go to All Pride Fitness where you'll learn all kinds of fun stuff about people. Yeah, I know I have all kinds of other stories, but anyway. But the point is that 6-8 months ago I would not have, and I didn't say a word to anyone. I'd just go in with my mission to complete what I needed to do and not engage with people, and that's not me. And I am a type of person that wants to connect with people. It doesn't have to be deep or anything, but just learning who you are. So toxic masculinity, I looked up what the meaning was. Of course, we've got a lot of different meanings for that. So I went to, Wikipedia seems to be the place du jour, but
Wikipedia.
yeah, exactly. But I actually went to an article that the New York Times wrote in 2019 on it. It said, so what does toxic, I'm going to read just a quick, snapshot of what the article gave as the kind of the definition of it. What does toxic masculinity or traditional masculinity ideology mean? Researchers have defined it in part as a set of behaviors and beliefs that include the following: suppressing emotions or masking distress, maintaining an appearance of hardness, violence as an indicator of power, think tough guy behavior. In other words, toxic masculinity is what can come of teaching boys that they can't express emotion openly, that they have to be tough all the time, that anything other than that makes them feminine or weak. That's what the New York Times has to say. There's a lot to unpack there.
Is anybody triggered? Because that'll do it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that could be triggering. I'm going to ask the woman in the room, what do you think toxic masculinity means without looking at a definition?
Right.
When just extemporaneously you think of those two words.
Well, I'm not as I'm a little jaded on the subject just because I guess experience is a better way to talk about it. Is I have talked about this at length with my husband and with other men in my life for I don't even know how long before it became like a catchphrase, and a little bit it was because, my oldest is a boy, and
how old is he?
He's 11. He'll be 12 in January. And so he's 6th grade. He's entering this part of his life where he's starting to go, okay, I don't know how I feel about all this.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. He's learning a lot socially. He's learning a lot about his body. There's just a lot going on. But up until now, he's just always been so kind, so chill, so peacemaker, so he could care less what somebody else thinks about him. He doesn't really follow crowds, and that's something I've always loved about him, and I've always worried about him. I'm I don't want him to feel like he has to be any certain way, and I want him to feel okay to cry. I want him to feel okay to express himself, and that it's important to express yourself, and but I had to go on that personal exploration of what that means to even how do you talk to your kids about that if you haven't really explored it yourself, right? And so it's just sparked so many conversations. And my dad is a man's man. He's a guy. He's
a lumberjack.
Basically, it's funny, he was a lumber salesman for a really long time, a broker. And I'm the only girl in my family, so I have a younger and an older brother, and then I have my dad. And so I have all these examples of different kinds of masculinity, and it's when it comes to a toxic level, it's just different, because I think that there is a greater conversation around maybe changing the word a little bit. And this might spark an interesting conversation between the three of you, is that toxic masculinity is going to think that this way is toxic, but for what's toxic for one person is not necessarily toxic for another, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And for me, it was I found this phrase that really stood out to me called wounded masculine instead of toxic masculinity, because that's ultimately the root of what's happening there.
I like that.
There's an open freaking wound, right? And because I'm how do I allow my son to be who he is, allow my husband to be who he is? Because there's some guys that are just not gonna want to talk. They're not, that's not their MO. Some girls are that way, some women are that way. And so honestly, through my podcast and things, we had many conversations around different types of energy, and it led me down this really interesting research pattern of like learning about masculine energy and feminine energy. And like, I don't know if you guys have ever explored that concept between the two, but it took me down a really interesting path, like honestly, because it helped me learn a little more about like wounded masculine versus using toxic masculinity. I think that sometimes, especially now, that is such a catchphrase.
Oh, yes.
And
it becomes a catch-all for
Exactly.
any type of behavior. Let's just throw that label at it. And we all know that
Exactly.
labels are a big part of the kind of zeitgeist right now. It's
Right.
just throw a label at it.
Yeah, and I know my son has watched other people his age go through this, where some person that goes, well, you're toxic. And he's like, I don't even know what that means. Like, he's just like, what do you mean? And I said, okay, there's a massive difference between boundaries that are healthy for each individual and then outward toxicity, you know? And so for me, like, getting back to your original question, I'm such a girl. I love Pinterest, right?
Shocking.
I love Pinterest. And because it organizes my thoughts.
You're not the only one. I like Pinterest too.
There's good things on Pinterest. I mean,
Wow, the
recipes.
user
I'll tell you.
interface is terrible. Sorry, that's
It is terrible, but there's some nice things on
It's a
it.
very
Oh, there-
scrolling situation.
yes.
Like, you could go for days. But I started keeping a board that was based around masculine and feminine energy. And when you said you wanted to talk about masculine energy, I was like, let's do it. I've got so many things I want to talk about with that, because my husband's had so many aha moments through this, because he grew up in a not great situation. Dad, super wealthy, stupid education. Like, I can't even tell you how many. He's got like 2 PhDs and like 6 bachelor's degrees. And I mean, it's like this whole thing.
He's
looks
not
incredibly.
overcompensating, though. Is
Not
he?
at all. No.
Does he ever drive a big truck too?
No,
What-
but he has 2 boats. So
We got to talk about big trucks, man.
I have a big truck.
Oh, I have a big truck.
I mean, that can be a thing too. But there was this particular list on here around the wounded masculine that I really identified with by seeing how certain behaviors within the wounded masculine can keep someone from progression. It can keep them from not connecting in relationships, having a full life. And nobody wants to look back and regret. Nobody wants to look back and go, man, I mean, we're all learning, you know, but part of this list was attachment to success. Not to say that success is bad, not that achievement is bad, but an attachment to it, you know, maybe that's a conversation to have. Fear of failure, need to be right, aggressive, cold and distant, critical and judgmental, selfish, stuck in mind, not in touch with the emotions, and defending himself and attacking.
So my LinkedIn profile.
Let's hit each individual one and have a little discussion about each bullet
Cool.
point.
That's the perfect way. And because I think that all of us, Gary has come from a very different background than Mike and I.
Yeah.
I came from a different background than all of you because of all kinds of different reasons. But I think ultimately we all kind of have a different definition for each of those things and how they play into our life because of the circumstances that we were exposed to, that we put ourselves into. And because I know that as you read those, I could absolutely identify with them, but I have tried to stay away from them. So let's start at the top and work our way down.
Let's do it. Attachment to success.
Gary,
I mean, I could keep talking.
No, I'm gonna. I just kind of want to get all of our takes on it,
Yeah.
and see what that means to us and how is it played out in our lives, and is it something that defines us or we're kind of repulsed by it? What do you think about that, Gary?
For me, I don't know, like attachment to success. Like when I hear that, like I just think that for me, like I just immediately go back to my childhood and stuff like that, and I just think of like my like uncle, you know, that didn't really do anything, but he was always just talking down on me. And now I'm just like, I have to work, you know, 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week. So it's like,
I'm gonna prove him wrong.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like when I'm not doing that, almost, it's like, I don't know, like on weeks now, you know, when I work 55 hours, like I feel like I'm lazy. Like it's really weird to have this thing that's just, you know, going on like in the back of my head. But you know, like when you're expanding, you know, like on toxic masculinity and stuff like that, like to me, like I think of a peacock, you know, like I think of like, you know, somebody that's probably hurt or damaged like on the inside, but they're like trying to seem tough, or they're trying to seem big and bad, you know, whether, you know, it's a giant truck, or, you know, whether it's, you know, you're talking about women you're with, or, you know, things you have. And, you know, it's it's just about, you know, reading and like getting better and, you know, trying to better yourself rather than trying to, you know, demean somebody else and look down like on other people and stuff. So I just always think of like a peacock, you know, when it spreads its wings and it just tries to seem bigger and badder than it is. I mean,
that's a very good way to put it. And I think that it ultimately you can almost reduce it down to that if you wanted to, because we're making it about somebody else and not about ourselves, so that we can protect ourselves or whatever it might be. Mike, what do you think on success, the definition of that, and has it driven you or defined you in any shape, way, or form?
Well, you know, and we're all kind of a product of our environment, you know, as we're growing up, and how our parents are and how we learn, or maybe we don't even have that aspect of having parents around. But like for me, I grew up with a single mom. So hers was always very much, you have to have a good job, you have to go to college, everything has to be, you know, da-da-da-da-da. If you don't have that, then you're not successful. And so as I've gotten older and now that I have my own kids, I'm like, success isn't defined by your diploma or your degree or your job or your, you know, financial status. It's, am I raising my kids to be good people? Am I involved in my community? Yeah. That's how I've looked at it more so now, compared to where I was before. I was like, I got to be making $100,000 a year. If I'm not, I'm a failure. You know, because Gary over there is making, you know, 150. I got to stay up with him. So it's almost like keeping up with the Joneses. But you see it a lot more with men than I think you do with women.
For sure. Actually, well, I'm going to take you guys on a tangent for a second, because this goes with it. All of us have masculine and feminine energy within us.
51%,
we all do.
49%?
Basically,
yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at all the men you've ever met or known in your life, and you physically have spent time in person with them, you can feel that energy. There are some men that are a little more feminine and some women that are a little more masculine. So it's like gender kind of has a play with it, but not really. I mean, you look at a lot of the gender confusion around and people being confused about what they identify with. It has a lot to do with, we carry both of those sides of those energies with us. And I think, honestly, the more we go inward and we get to know ourselves and know where we lie in there and understand what the energy is and that feels good to us, the more we go inward, the better we can move out of that wounded situation. We can move into something that feels more aligned to our energy and like what feels good, you know. And I think the longer we stick around trying to like mold ourselves to what we think we should be, which is, you know, part of that attachment to success. I mean, the next one on the list is fear of failure. I mean, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They're virtually the same. They're just a little different side of the spectrum, because if you want one, then the opposite of that is your biggest fear in life, or whatever the circumstance might be. Yeah.
But like with women, coming from my perspective, it's because I never saw myself being a stay-at-home mom. Like never. I always saw myself as having a career. I always saw myself as just figuring out whatever was necessary for my kids at the time. I hated cooking. I hated everything about house stuff. Like, yeah, the decoration was kind of fun, but I just never saw myself as a homemaker. And eat my words, as soon as I, you know, have kids, you know, my oldest has an autoimmune condition. And so his first 6 years of life was kind of touch and go. It was very like, how do we help this kid? Because it was all around food. And the problem with that is that I was away his first year of life, and he had surgery once during that time. And then it just became clear that somebody needed to be kind of the arbiter of his food. Like they had to be there, because he would have problems at all times, and there was no, you know, rhyme or reason to it. And I was the breadwinner at the time. My husband was going to school, and it was like, we'll figure it out. And man, let me tell you, when I decided to stop working, we decided to stop working, it was really hard for me, because I was constantly looking for ways to achieve, to make money, to like bring something to the house. And I mean, for like 5 years, my husband was like, you don't need to do that. Like you don't have to. I know you want to. And he's like, I'll support you in whatever you want to do, but you don't have to. But there was this thing, like I felt like I had to in the back of my brain. And it's as I've learned enough about myself, it's that I am very like 49-51. I am almost matching masculine and feminine energy. It's like I want to achieve. There's something about me that wants that, but I wasn't viewing things that being a homemaker and being a mom for my kids full time, I just why do we do that?
Yeah, those weren't the achievements that you had assigned to yourself as something. You looked at those as things that you just had to do. They were part of like showering and
it was like
raising the kids. Exactly.
It took me a long time to accept that. Like, honestly, I betcha Corona was a big part of that. A huge Band-Aid rip of like, well, you're not going anywhere, so find a way to enjoy it. Like,
you don't have a choice.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. Yeah, and it's just take a lot of, and I think every person has to go through this where they start looking inward of like, well, who am I? What makes me tick? You know, and it's, I mean, I still do things where I bring money into the home, but it's in a different way than I ever expected. I don't work a 9 to 5. I don't do things traditionally, and exploring that masculine and feminine energy, because masculine energy, and you guys might relate to this, is very straight. It's like the way to think of it is masculine energy is A to B, morning, night, 24-hour cycle, straight. Yeah, blinders. Kind of like stress, tunnel vision. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And feminine energy is very circular. I mean, you can see it in menstrual cycles. You can see it in how they sync to the moon, how they sync to each other.
Right? Physiologically,
that's
that
bonkers.
Blows my mind.
I know
that happens.
I know
full moons are so weird with women.
I trust me. I know
they can't sleep. There's moods are different. It's so weird.
I know, and it's even been hard for me to figure out, and I am one. Like, it's just to this point of like, I had to accept that I am probably more on the feminine energy side, but I wanted to be more masculine because that was the achievement that I wanted. It was like, 9 to 5, 24-hour cycle, A to B, achieved tasks, like check off the list. Like, masculine energy is just very linear. I can't think of a better way to put it, but this is a list. It's doing, producing, active, thinking, logical, linear, task-oriented, consuming, heeding, competition, talking, intellect. And the women are completely opposite. Feminine energy is completely opposite. It's being, receiving, passive. Not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just part of it. Feeling, emotional, cyclical, relationship-oriented, allowing, cooling, cooperation, listening, and intuition.
How much of our, I guess, historical,
personal history?
No, in time. Like, everything she's saying sounds like, okay, back in the 50s, what did the guy do? What did the woman do? It's almost ingrained in us, and it's been ingrained in our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents, down the line, all the way to, who knows?
But you know where it goes bad? Is when we think that's it.
Yeah.
Those two lists, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I've learned so much about this because I've been exploring that feminine energy because I've been ignoring it for so long that I was like, you know what? I want to understand what this means. Because, like, I don't want to be cyclical. I don't want to be passive. I don't want to be, like, but obviously I just felt like I was doing this for the last 10 years, like, hitting walls after wall. And I was like, something's got to give because this doesn't feel right. Yeah. And so as I explored it more, I just started to realize we have both of those energies within us because we need them both.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And we need both sides of the coin. Like, we need to be able to be passive sometimes. We need to be logical and linear sometimes. And it's the key is going in and getting to know ourselves better, which is part of this mental health journey, is who am I? And who am I to connect with other people? And what do I bring to this world? And I don't have to be like Jane Doe next to me.
I wish we could figure this all out when we were younger.
Oh my God!
Well,
when we're Paxton and Hunter's age, and, when they're that young, and this is the time when they're
so
that
formidable.
Preteen to early teens this is when they should be figuring that out. Yeah. Not when we're in our 40s or
and I'm
late
trying.
30s or 30s or whatever.
I'm trying. It's really interesting having a kiddo who's in junior high who's looking around at everybody else and he's like, I don't even recognize that person anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I was like, you know what? It's okay.
Is.
I was like, it's okay. They're trying to figure out who they are. And it's okay that you might feel like more comfortable with who you are because he's always been that way. And I'm like, you gotta let that person figure it out. Let them figure it out. They may think they're a tough guy right now. They may think that swearing is like the coolest thing on the planet right now. He came home from first day of school and he was like, Mama, everybody swears so much. And I was like, get used to it, buddy. Like,
I've heard so many kids, like Halloween, for example, the teenagers that are out in their little pods going around knocking on doors. Then they're cussing up to the next house. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
If my mom heard me saying that, she'd backhand me.
Right?
But nowadays you just go to jail for that. So.
Right? No kidding.
Soap in the mouth would be a backhand or
The soap in the mouth thing, I remember that. I mean, just like in A Christmas Story when he had a particular fondness for Palmolive or whatever it was. It didn't happen very often, but I definitely remember that. Gary, you brought up your uncle, and that is something that I have thought about every day since you shared that with us. Because when I think of toxic masculinity, you brought up wounded masculinity, and that is what applies directly, I bet, to your uncle. I don't know his past. I don't need to know, because anyone that would treat a child like that has got to have somewhere in his past that he was wounded one way or another. Is that a fair assessment of him?
Oh, definitely. And for me, that was just something that I didn't realize until I got older. That it wasn't really about me. It was about something, it was some sort of trauma or toxicity or something that he was dealing with that he was taking out on me, and because one of the things we're talking about, like, he just couldn't look himself in the mirror, and rather than looking yourself in the mirror, to fix yourself, he just chose just to displace that and then take it out like on a different energy, and that energy happened to be me.
Well, and I would imagine that, and this is something that I have experienced, is that people like that, whether you call it projection or whatever, it's that positivity that they don't like. You were probably, and from what you shared with us, a pretty happy kid. Yeah, you fought and whatnot, but until that point in your life when you were subjected to that, it seemed like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you were pretty upbeat. At least you had a fairly positive attitude about things until you went to Milwaukee and you were exposed to those negative energies. But guys like that, we see them, they think they're the manliest of the men, and because whether it's promiscuity, whether it's picking on people, bullying, things like that, or they're a child of an alcoholic, and then they're going to, all of the bad things that occurred to them, they're going to put on other people. I know that in my life, I have certainly experienced it. I've seen, and when you step back and you try to remove that veneer of toughness that they portray, you realize that they're just a child almost. My father-in-law, the last time I ever interacted with him, he tried to choke me and he told me he was going to kill me. But I knew that, because I'd been around him for so long, that he was a mama's boy. And he was constantly looking for his mother's approval. His mother was a very godly woman, just a great person. But she obviously didn't give him something when he was a child. He was the baby and whatnot. But that is something that I see so much with men that are compensating with whatever it might be, that they just can't do what Genevieve said a minute ago, which is figure out who they are. I know that for me, it wasn't until this year that I really started to figure out who I was, hell, to even think about what I wanted or needed as a human, because I've been so focused on everyone else in my life. When you grow up with an alcoholic, the focus is them. That's where the focus goes. Make sure that they're not going to die or whatever it might be. So that's on the wounded thing. I think that is almost a perfect way to put it. What was the second thing?
I was like, we
list?
actually kind of just touched on the rest of the list accidentally. We talked about need to be right, aggressive, cold and distant, critical and judgmental, selfish. I think the one that I want to talk about is stuck in the mind, not in touch with emotions. Like, I think that's so easy to do, because sometimes when we aren't really sure what we're feeling or how to talk about it is where the toxicity gets stuck, and it's like... And reinforced, exactly. And the behavior gets reinforced in different, whatever you're looking for ways it comes at you. And I didn't get to hear the story. I'm excited to listen to the interview you guys had last week. I heard the tail end of it, but I didn't get to, I haven't heard it yet. So I'd be interested to know, does this list apply
Definitely. I mean, the list, it pretty much applies to what I was talking about. So I think earlier you talked about failure and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just for me, like, I was always scared of just trying new things, because I hate being bad at things. Like, I just wanted to go out, and be the biggest and the fastest, and just like we talked about, before. Sometimes, you're going to step out in the field and you're going to lose 40-0. Or, sometimes you're going to try ice skating and fall or something like that. And I just think for me, like, I never wanted to try something new, because I was always, scared of failing and stuff like that. And, like, it wasn't until I got older, that I realized that, like, fail just means first attempt in learning, basically, and it's just about,
Love that.
Stepping out and trying new things. I mean, for me, like, I'm not used to just, talking about my feelings and sitting here and basically talking to strangers about my life and stuff. But for me, I mean, it's important to, like, tell my story, to hear your story and your story and your story, because we all have a story, and it's like something we say, could really ring out, to somebody else, just to know, like, damn, like, they're going through that too.
This is real.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
and it's not something that you're going to see on a sitcom. You're not going to see a TikTok on it very often, unless you're honing in on that sector of TikTok or IG or whatever it might be. Unless you want to immerse yourself in this type of thought process, it's very easy to avoid it.
Exactly.
The world is actually kind of designed to avoid it, because the more we think about the reasons why we act out, then the less likely we are inclined to, whether it's take in garbage content on TikTok or
Distract yourself the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
And-
super easy to do.
well, and we're seeing distraction be a bigger and bigger part of our lives each and every day, because of, I mean, look, Facebook just renamed itself Meta because the metaverse, they believe, is the next coming of the internet, Web 3.
Ready Player One.
Exactly. And that's, in fact, if you really think about that and how, I mean, we're kind of getting meta here if you think about the description or the definition of it. But that disconnect that they're trying to create is going to be the downfall of society if we don't do something to stop that now.
Well, listen, the flip side,
Okay.
so like the positive or healthy masculine list is honestly, I think, a lot of what you guys are aiming for on this podcast is you want people that identify with that masculine energy to feel this way. It's present, non-judgmental, committed and powerful, deep integrity and humbleness, focus and discipline, supportive and encouraging, grounded and of service, honest, logical, and accountable.
The last one wraps all of them together, though. Because if you're accountable to yourself and others, those things almost have to. Yeah, exactly. They have to happen. And if you don't, and that's where accountability, or, I've talked about Jocko Willink and guys like that, it starts with accountability.
Yeah, and like the honest part of it is also being honest with yourself.
Oh, more than anything.
Which is honestly probably the scariest part. Like being really honest with yourself of like, I feel triggered by this. I hate that word.
So do
like,
I.
I've heard you guys say this several times in your podcast where I'm like, that one word is so overused.
It triggers Genevieve.
Oh, the triggered word triggers me. I can't. It's mostly because there's so much connotation behind it,
Yes.
and it's like being triggered is so unacceptable and emotional and all these things. And it's like, okay, I don't even want to use that word anymore, but it's the only way I knew how to get that in one word out there. But it's like the things that trigger us are usually the thing we really need to take a look at.
Yes.
And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to look at themselves at that deep of a level and be like, why? Why? Because it doesn't come quickly. You don't understand those things quickly. It's like, I really started doing like a deep dive on myself about 3 years ago because I was really tired of hitting that brick wall over and over and over again. And I'm like, I was ready to throw the towel in and just be like, all right, take me away. Whatever happens, happens. But that's just not who I am. I'm a planner. I love to achieve things. And it's like, but things were not happening the way I wanted them to. And I went on this deep journey of trying to figure myself out. And oh my gosh, was it triggering the whole way? Like, right? Like the whole way I was just like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, and it was just, and even my husband was just like, I feel like I'm getting to know you on a different level. We'd been married 16 years. Like, he's just like, wait. And it challenged our relationship. It challenged my relationship with my parents. It challenged my friendships. It challenged my work. It challenged my religious beliefs, I mean, every aspect of my life, I was like, I had to take a real like deep look at, and it feels uncomfortable. But it's interesting, 3 years later, I look back and I'm like, man, I'm so glad I did that hard work, because I'm so more grounded than I've ever been. Like this whole list on here, I really do feel that it's, you know, and the healthy feminine is similar, and it just feels, if you guys know somebody that has this as their qualities, like a man, you can be like, they feel peaceful. They have this like calmness about them where you're like, I kind of like being around you.
Yeah.
I
have someone like that I asked to be a kind of a life mentor. I don't know how much podcast you've listened to, but you know, I've struggled a lot. I think this whole awakening, if you will, was all born out of COVID, honestly.
Oh,
because it's forced me to look in, because I'm like, I was ready to check out the world altogether. And, you know, and a lot of this wounded I like that a lot better than toxic. The wounded masculine, I would say that it's born from the traumas and the abuse that we face as growing up. And it could be abuses and traumas from other kids. I remember in high school playing high school football. I won't mention a couple names, but
what? Come on.
No, he's on the radio actually.
Really?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
And I see him in the gym, and I see him out in public. So if he ever listens in, you know, back when I was a kid, I got ear hold. And if you ever know what that is, you get a helmet in your ear, and
I don't know what this is.
You get a concussion basically.
Yeah.
You
get up and you just shake it off.
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
They had those ammonia sticks back then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just shake it off. It's fine.
Right, but see, and then that's where I've experienced it the most is in sports.
Yeah.
Where you have to be the biggest, the baddest, the ugliest type of person to succeed.
Yeah.
And if you're not that, then you're nothing.
Yeah.
Which, have you guys all been in sports?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I coached all-star cheerleading, so I feel like I can at least relate on this front. Like I was in competitive sports my whole life. Have you guys each had an experience where you're like, that was awesome, I want to be a part of that again? Have you had that experience? Can you say like, okay, like that was awesome, I want to do that again, or I want to be a part of that again? Have you had that?
I don't think so. Well,
have you coached your son in a situation where you're like, that was awesome?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say
There's something about, okay. So did that feel toxic in any way? Those good situations that you remember yourself being in?
Not that one situation, no. But
right. It's
with
possible,
being
right?
Baseball around here.
Can be.
It very much so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of daddy ball.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
Very toxic.
Oh, for sure.
So.
Yeah. But I think that it's important to note that it's like the majority of sports gets a bad rap because it just takes all the bad parts of the toxic masculinity or wounded masculine or whatever and goes to that bad list. But it is 100% possible to have a wonderful masculine experience within a sport, right?
Yeah.
And it feels freaking good. You're like, that was awesome, you know? And I think that it's like, I wish that we could create that for our kids more. I think that's why it's like, I would love to coach, but I feel like it'd be weird to coach my son's baseball team because I play baseball.
There's one coach that I really like. He actually helped out when I was coaching Hunter's double A, single A, and triple A teams. Kyle Stevens, do you know him? So Kyle's amazing.
I know him well, actually.
And he is probably one of the most masculine guys I know, but he's fair. He's nice, and he gives you that good feeling. He
coached my son's volleyball team this year, and we go to church together.
Kyle's a great guy.
He's a good guy.
And
he
would be one of the people that I would put on the non-toxic side.
Right. Yeah, and it's like it is 100% possible to create that.
Oh.
Right? You're like, oh yes.
I mean, the way I would kind of characterize is, and football was what I enjoyed, but I played like 9 sports growing up. But I could lay somebody out and then help them up,
right?
And we're good.
Yeah.
It's the game. Don't be mad at me. Don't hate the player.
Both
hate the
sides
game.
need that. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but that's enjoy the competition.
Yeah.
But respect your opponent and that they're trying hard, they're working hard, that their goal is to defeat me. And at the end of the day, one of us is going to come out on top. I'm going to learn something if I win or lose, no matter what. I can walk out of there and say, I have something I can work on and something I can be proud of. But the toxic side of it, or the wounded side, is if I win, I'm going to stand over you and I'm going to give you the DX chop. and if I lose, I'm gonna
all the emotions are happening over here.
and if I lose, then I'm gonna blame some other unforeseen force, the referees.
I wore the wrong underwear today.
Yeah, you tripped me. Blame everyone else but me.
Yeah, that's part of it. Taking accountability.
Ownership. Yeah, accountability.
Honesty, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So out of all of us, raise your hand or just say I or whatever. How many have blamed everybody else but your own self?
I've totally been there before.
Of course.
I don't think I did because I was a good football player, but
not necessarily for that, just anything in life. Like I used to blame all my problems on my parents. And then when I started going through counseling and the groups that I'm in, I'm like, man, yeah, they're a part of it. They're part of that abuse and trauma stuff, but it was my choices that led me down to where I'm at. Yeah.
So when I was in 6th grade, I remember sitting in the Taco Bell drive-thru with my mom and my younger brother, who was like 5 or 6 at the time. And my mom is not a sports person. She knits, she sews, she paints. She's never played sports in her life. My dad would take her to a Mariners game and she would bring her knitting. And he was like, what are you doing? So I'll give you a picture of who she is. We're sitting in the drive-thru and I was sulking because we'd lost our basketball game. And she was like, why are you upset? And I'm like, man, we lost. She's like, well, you didn't play good. And I was like, excuse me? Like as a 6th grader. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was just like, I mean, they played better than you. And she just, man, she took me to task. I was like, so mad at her for saying that. I'm like, my mom, why would my mom say that to me? But it was something that always stuck with me. And she was so matter of fact, she was unemotional about it to the point of just not being mean or cold, but just like, hey, it's going to happen sometimes.
It's a fact of life.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, and she's like, what did you learn from it? She's like, what are you going to do with that now? And I thought about that, I mean, probably many, many times over my life now of like, you know, we need to go through those experiences so that way we can it's part of our story, you know?
I think if you are from that trauma era, if you're one of those people that were brought up, that failure could set you back for life.
Oh yeah.
Well, Gary brought that up last week, how it wasn't even a particular failure. It was the failure on a person
the fear
that
of it.
Yeah, but you looked up to somebody that let you down, and that was a tremendous failure in your eyes because you had put this person on a pedestal.
Oh, definitely.
And then they knocked themselves over, but you internalized that.
Definitely. I mean, you know, like it just goes back. Like I played football in high school. Like I didn't even play, you know, for very long. And, you know, there was a coach that like everybody loved. The girls loved him. The guys loved him. Like, you know, people just, you know, really appreciated him. And basically, long story short, he brought me out like in front of the team, was like, hey, GH, hey, Gary, like, I'm going to trade you for a goat, and then I'm going to shoot the goat, like, in front of everybody.
That's the story I was talking about.
And just,
I'm like, what?
No, that's the other one besides the uncle.
Yeah, and just like, I was just, you know, like I was in shock, you know, and it was something that stuck with me, and just, you know, till this day, you know, people call me the GOAT, and it's not because I'm the greatest of all time.
Although that's kind of cool because they don't know that.
I mean,
other people don't know that.
Do.
Yeah,
the people that do are probably like, that's messed up.
Right, but yeah, I mean, even like for my son now, he's 16, like he's a basketball player. And,
he's 6'9".
Yeah.
Whoa, hello.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. He's a big kid, and probably 2 years ago, he was playing like in this basketball tournament out in Hillsborough or Beaverton, and LeBron James' son was out there playing out there too and stuff like that. And it was a pretty big tournament. And they went in and played this team from the South or something. And there was 2 girls like on this team. And one of them was a post player and the other one was a guard. And when I tell you, my son got the biggest beatdown I've ever seen
Really?
in my life by these girls. One of them was posting him up and doing, you know, like hook shots and turnarounds, and like the other one was doing crossovers and hezzies and all this stuff. And I'm just thinking, I love this because, you know, sometimes you need things like that just
yeah,
to
you
wake
get
up.
to check.
Yes.
You get to check yourself.
Yeah.
As my dad would say, knock your dick in the dirt.
Oh my gosh.
Get off your high horse.
Yeah. And just, I
Sorry
loved
for
it.
Don't say sorry.
I'm like, I'm in here and you say I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's fine. I listen to your podcast. It's okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a great story. Honestly, I want my kids to have those moments where you're kind of like, you know, like, because I mean, if anything, he can also be like, I want to aspire to be like that.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's like as soon as you stop getting challenged, the growth kind of,
Yeah, exactly. Like it goes back, to failure, and it goes back to losing 40-0 and stuff. I just think you just need those things just to get better and to kind of dig yourself like out of the trenches, or to get your dick out of the dirt. Whatever you got to do to get better.
I experienced that this last baseball season with Hunter. Coaching him. This is the first year I didn't coach because of work. It was just too busy. But he was used to being the starter, batting first or second. To going to this last year on his regular team, and he had the same coach. He had the same head coach, and to not starting, to batting bottom of the lineup.
Ooh.
And and then All Stars came along, and I saw the email come through. It says, if you want your kid to be on All Stars, put your name in the hat, basically. I didn't put his name in the hat. I'm like, I don't think he did very well. And he knows he didn't do well. It could have been, circumstances with me going through the divorce and all of that process could have definitely affected his mentality.
Or could have been Corona. I mean,
could have been that too.
Quarantine kind of messed with everybody.
Video games, rather do that.
Yeah.
But and then so he actually got selected for All Stars, but then it was still the same thing. He didn't play hardly at all. He only got to bat once a game and play, and I don't even think he played a couple games, maybe an inning. But it definitely affected his mentality. Like, he's like, I don't even want to play baseball anymore. I'm like, dude, this is not how it's always going to be.
Him and Paxton should have a conversation.
That's a bad year. But what are you going to do from it? So before All Stars, what we would do is we would go to the batting cages, and he struggled at first, but I was in control of the pitching machine that's throwing these balls, and I'm like, okay, we'll see what we can do. So I dialed it up to 60, 65, and he was hitting it regularly. And I'm like, dude, why aren't you hitting it in the game? I just don't understand. But it's so much in his head that when it came game time, it was almost like he just froze because he didn't want to mess up.
I mean, I experienced that with coaching in All-Star because we were the type of team that traveled the whole nation. Like, I was like dead to the world from January until like May, and I coached girls from 7 to 18. So it was like all over the board. And
you coached 7-year-old to 18-year-old girls.
Yes.
And you survived?
Like not intact? Unscathed. Okay, not unscathed. I mean, that was quite an experience. But we're constantly saying this to our girls, is that the difference between a talented person and a champion is what's going on up in their head. Like, how are you handling the stress? How are you handling setbacks? How are you handling injuries? And it's amazing how every aspect of our life is like that. And it's like, I'm so glad he had that experience. I'm sure he would not agree. If he can hear me right now, he's probably like, nah. But I mean, Paxton went through the same thing this year.
Paxton was on the bench too.
I didn't put him up for All Stars either. Because he actually had a great year, but the only reason when he got selected is as a relief pitcher. And he was like fourth or fifth down the line. So
pitching,
and I told him, I'm like, buddy, this is an incredible experience for you to see what it's like to be around people that are playing well and that are being coached well. And honestly, I was really surprised. He took it so well, but I prepped him so hard because I was like, you're probably not going to play. But you were going to practice every day. It's going to be the best camp of your life, like 6-week camp of your life, right? And it's to the point where it's lit a fire under him, where he's like, let's go, like, let's do. And it was interesting because he used to be just like that, where it was like, everything felt like defeat. I suck. And it was all this internal like conversation with himself that I've been working really hard, because he goes to shame so easy. And I feel like that's part of what that wound in that masculinity is that as soon as our brains turn to shame, we get stuck there, and it just turns into this like, this thing. I think you were touching on that a little bit of like, you just kind of get stuck. And I actually learned about this in a book that I think anyone could enjoy. And the title is a little, it's called Burnout. And it was written by 2 twin sisters, and you'd think twins have very similar reactions to things or whatever because they're identical twins, and they had very different reactions to things. And one was having anxiety attacks and was in the hospital for it all the time, and she felt this need to perform, and the other one had kind of had figured it out. And so they started doing scientific research behind our feelings and the nervous system, and they called it the feelings tunnel. And it's like, we have our beginning, they can actually document this in our nervous system, that we have a beginning, a middle, and an end to our feelings. And as humans, we get stuck in that tunnel in the middle, and we never complete that feeling cycle. And I think that that's a massive part of toxicity. You know, we get stuck there, and then we want to project it on everybody else, because I'm stuck here because of everybody else. And it's like, no, hold on.
Well, and that also leads into, it can lead you down the path, if you're not careful, into addictions.
Exactly.
Because it's a feedback loop.
Exactly. And it was amazing to learn the things that we can do to complete that cycle had almost nothing to do with other people. It was like, it's like 80% of the list that they came out with, it was all scientific study based, of like how our nervous system was handling these feelings and how to complete it. And 80% of it had nothing to do with another person. It had to do with how we can do it for ourselves. And it's not as complicated. It was things like the biggest stretch of your life, coming out of bed in the morning, oddly enough, working out. One of the ones that is involved another person is a really good big long hug. But most of the stuff is not masculine. Yeah. I know, give yourself a big hug, right?
we're supposed to get like 8 hugs per day.
10.
Or something. 10.
Really?
10 physical touch.
Wow, really?
Type of things
That's
a day.
a lot.
Okay.
As a human.
Will is shook.
And well, you've seen the. I know you've probably heard about it in school. The babies that it was like a. God, what was it? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was an orphanage, Russian orphanage.
And where they would isolate these kids, and they would have no physical contact, no, like
they'd be stuck in a crib like a jail,
like nothing, like they're an animal.
Really?
And they come out totally like psychopaths.
Oh yeah, I mean and psychopathic tendencies is something that I actually enjoy reading about.
Because it's interesting. You're like, how?
Well, because I think I have some of the tendencies, and
I think everyone does.
Yeah, absolutely. Not in a. Because it's, you know, you guys talk about the getting in a place where, how am I going to overcome that, or wanting to quit or something. The one thing that I do appreciate about this is that I never had the option to quit, whether I was going to do something. I was never given the opportunity by my mom to quit a sport or anything like that, because I couldn't succeed at it. I knew that I wasn't going to be the best, but I did want to make sure that I could show I deserved to play on the field. I mean, I started playing baseball when I was in 2nd grade. And so for me, that has not been something that has ever really crossed my mind, is the quit part. I will just go, and my problem is that I have gone to the complete other side, where I will not ask for help. Because I'm so used to doing it myself, and that there's this constant drive to prove to myself that I can do it. Whether it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's physical or mental, I want to prove to myself, because I didn't get a lot of like good job and stuff like that from my folks. I just had to show myself, yeah, you can do it. You're capable of building the tent or whatever it might, and that's obviously something fairly trivial, but so that is something different than what you guys have experienced, where it was an option. I don't have the fingers to do the things that you do, but like I've said before, I don't know what it's like. I don't know that it's any different. I just know that I live in a two-handed world, and I have to work with one, but I'm going to do the best. And I want to do better than everyone with 2 hands. But I'm all right that I was never going to be Michael Jordan. I was never going to be, some big badass lineman. Not that it couldn't happen. I understood that there were limitations, but I had this constant drive to at least perform on the level of everyone else.
Do you think that was the drive to achieve, or the mind of curiosity to see how far you could take it?
I think it was that I was made fun of a lot for my hand, and I was also the fat kid. So I was, I tell my kids, and I go back and forth on whether this was the right thing to do or not, but they would get made fun of at school or something like that, a setback. And I'm like, I don't like the comparison thing, but I was like, I was the fat one-handed kid, and if I survived it, I know you can survive it. I know that it's not easy. I know, and it's not supposed to be easy, because the only way you're going to grow and get better is if you do things that are hard. Yeah, but sure. I think for me, it was, it was just about me. I grew up alone. My brother and sister are both a lot older than me. My parents got divorced when I was 6. I was in charge of my own entertainment. I was in charge of everything. I mean, I was doing my own laundry and cooking and that kind of stuff at a fairly young age. So I had to challenge myself. I didn't have anyone else challenging me, really. So, but on the field, everyone kind of looked at me. I was like this, I don't know, kind of I don't want to say oddity, just like the token handicap guy. And I hated that. I never wanted to be treated differently. So I think that's kind of where that was really...
It formed you.
Yeah, I just don't treat me differently. You be as hard on me or harder than everyone else. Because,
sounds like you were also like that towards yourself.
Oh, that's everything. I mean, you asked me last week if I had an audio background. Nope, I just wanted to do this. And the first podcast I did was talking about my battle with my weight. I mean, I'm going from 400 and some pounds down to 200. And that journey, that was the first podcast I did. I just turned on the mic and I ripped. And so not for anyone else. I know more than 5 people who listen to it, but I did it for me.
Yeah.
And but then a lot of what you guys have talked about here about learning about yourself. I mean, you talked about your journey being about 3 years. I think the 3 of us can safely say it's about it.
Yeah.
But we've really started to jump into the journey in the last year or so, right? I mean, since
18 months, yeah.
Yeah. So it's something that I really wish that I would have figured out, because I have never really thought about what I want, because what I want has never been important. So I make sure that I just can do what I can do, but it's always about everyone else and me taking care of that. And then when I stepped back and I started to say, well, no, this is what I want, that caused some ruffles, and it caused some problems with some relationships, because for a long time I put everyone else in front rather than me. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to be kind of a little bit selfish about my feelings and things like that.
Not selfish. I hate that word too. That's another one of those words where I'm like,
selfish, though.
That's not selfish. Like,
that's self-care.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so
see, I think of it as selfish because that's the mentality that I've been.
Right.
I was raised that way, that we always do. We make sure that we're quiet in the morning so no one else wakes up, and that we don't do this so that we make sure they're not disturbed, not just sleeping or whatever. But it's always about making sure everyone else is happy.
Yeah.
And that, this was like the family. That's the mentality. And so to take it back to what like I want is feels very, very weird.
I want to tell you about a tool that really helped me over the last years, that kind of like awakened me to like discovering myself in a different way. I know there's a lot of personality tests out there. There's like Myers-Briggs. There's like all these other ones. And I always thought they were fun. I thought it was interesting because every time I learned more about myself, I was like, and then I would shove it to the side and just be like, okay, that was cool, whatever. Have you guys ever heard of the Enneagram?
What? Say it again.
The Enneagram, ENNEAGREAM. It's Enneagram.
I've taken one that was a complete oddball.
Like the DISC test?
I've taken DISC. I've done the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
And then there was one that was complete. Have you done those?
Myers-Briggs,
Yeah.
I challenge you guys.
Okay, we'll do it and we'll bring it next podcast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm such a nerd.
I'll do it in Hawaii.
Whoa, that was so cool.
Yeah, let's not get
Let me throw that out there. Hawaii.
The Enneagram really put me, so it's a 1 through 9 number system. So there's 9 personalities that have all these different traits to it, but the intricacy of the Enneagram is so fascinating to me, because you have your number, and then you have wings on either side that you lean to. Like I'm an Enneagram 2, so I have 3 tendencies and 1 tendencies, and that I lean towards at different times in my life and maturity levels and things like that. And then there's subtypes you can go through, and then there's like this whole thing. And then it's like how you make decisions, what's important to you. It was really profound for me, and even more profound learning that I was an Enneagram 2, because I'm a lot like you in that fact, where I don't think about myself at all. Like at all, to the point where somebody asks me what I want to eat. I don't know. Like, what do you want to do this weekend? I don't know. What do you want to do? Like, down to the trivial stuff. But when you get to the important stuff, that was when I was like, ooh, this is bad. I don't actually know. You know, I don't actually know what's important to me other than kind of like gut check, like, okay, yeah, that's important to me. But that was what I was talking about earlier when I started to dive into that. I started to realize, oh yeah, I do have a problem with setting boundaries. And like, my knee-jerk reaction is to think about everybody else's feelings and their situation instead of mine, like every single time. And that's not healthy. Like, you know, it's like, but that's also my superpower. That's the other thing about the Enneagram is I have leaned into the things that make me more. And I've learned how to set better boundaries. I've learned how to lean into who I am in a way that just feels really good that I just didn't have before. And it was kind of funny. Like I was into it for about a year and then the pandemic hit. And I always joked, and I bet you guys can relate because it sounds like it's similar to you guys, is that I joked that I was on training wheels and then I was like forced into jet fuel all of a sudden. And that's what that felt like, you know? And it's like for you guys, maybe it was that you were, you know, walking and then you were given a bike and then you were put, you know, it's like you guys were put on this trajectory. And I knew enough that I was scared. When the pandemic hit, I was like, oh my gosh, I literally don't think that this could be any worse for me and who I am. And it was like, it was so hard. It was so hard because I was with the people that I love all the time. And I literally, it was like, my husband built me a studio in our garage so I could be alone.
Oh, it's very important.
Like, oh my gosh. But I didn't want to be alone. Like it took effort for me to be like, okay, I need to go spend some time with myself. Like mom guilt is real. Like but the Enneagram was so important to me because it made me see things that I didn't want to see. It made me see things that I hadn't considered. Oh yeah, that is a strength of mine. Like that is, and this is how I like to contribute to the world. And I think that's why I love podcasting. And it's like, it's also helped me understand other people on a different level and allow them to be themselves instead of doing the should game. We always joked on my podcast that I'm shoulding all over myself, right? Because that's what it feels like sometimes.
Giant should.
So much shoulding. Yeah. And that's what it feels like, you know, I feel like I should be doing this. And I caught myself saying that so much. I was like, well, I feel like I should, or I should have. And I'm like, okay, stop. Like, or why do I started exploring more about myself out of curiosity. That's why I asked you that earlier. It was like, you know, as I've looked at my problems, like a lot of people call it shadow work, which also drives me nuts too, because there's so much like spiritual connotation behind it. It's like, but it's such a personal journey. It's like when you do that shadow work or you do the stuff that you don't want to look at, it's just, it feels gross and you want to turn from it. And I think that's part of what creates toxic masculinity is you just don't want to look at it.
Well, and the nice thing too is why we did this is because we want people to be aware to be able to look at it together. Like we have all of our flaws. We want you to, you know, kind of come along with us.
Yeah, embrace it.
So touching on our flaws or what we think is something that we need to work on and how it relates to toxic masculinity or wounded or whatever, I was thinking maybe that the three of us could identify something that maybe we do that could be considered toxic or wounded that we would like to work on and challenge ourselves for a future podcast to see. And it doesn't have to be in a week or a month or we want to put some kind of time frame on it, but so that we challenge ourselves. And on the flip side of that, I want to see what Genevieve has to say is whether she would consider that toxic from the female perspective and a female perspective that is kind of has some masculine tendencies. It sounds like
I do.
I know that for me, and I'll start the hardness thing. I have been told for a long time that I look intimidating and that I am not a welcoming person to
that's not
just
my experience, but okay.
purely from a aesthetic. Like if you walk towards me at the grocery store, I call it resting beard face. And
that's a good one.
And the reason I think that I'm like that is because I was picked on and I was not treated well by kids and by adults alike. And even even up to the last year of my life. And so I think that for me, that is a protection against people. I am rather physically imposing. Don't
mess with me.
Exactly. Yeah. And then what it allows me to do is to control a situation. Because as soon as I crack a smile, everything's gone. People, immediately can see that I have a heart and that I'm not a cold ass motherfucker that wants to beat them up, because that's not me.
Yeah.
But the people that have been the worst to me around my hand, and I have probably not for a good reason, but I have never really given much credence to people that have said mean things. I mean, I've been called a mutant. I put that on them. And even though I do think that it has had an impact, but what happens is if I look like that, then they can't make fun of me because they're intimidated by me. And then I can crack that smile when I want to, and I can let them in. And I think that
you get that choice.
Exactly. Yeah. It's my choice, not theirs. But I don't ever want to intimidate anyone. I want everyone to be like, oh, that's Will and he's a nice guy. And I don't want it to have to be that I walk around like with the big fake smile, because nothing about me, I do not want anything to be fake. Yeah. I despise that. It's something that I have prided myself on for a long time is not to be fake. And I really don't like fakeness in other people either. That's why a lot of women are just irritating as all get out, because I can see
I'm a woman and I relate to that.
Yeah, you can see, but it guys too. I mean, whether it's toxic or not, you can, because they're lying. They're lying to themselves and they're lying to me. Mm-hmm. So that's something that but for the hardness thing, I really want to, and I have been trying.
I was like, I really feel like you already are, because I just met you and I don't feel that from you at all.
But you didn't get to see me when I'm by myself out at a
resting beard face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and I can't, I guess I don't walk around, and I know that a smile would be hidden by my beard anyway, like if I just had a smirk or something. But anyway, so I want to make sure that I am a welcoming person, and that the warmth in my heart that I have is felt by others without having to change my demeanor, I guess, is for the lack of a really long description there.
Okay, from that healthy masculine list, none of it in there says soft. None of it in there, like, all of it is in fact, it's committed and powerful, non-judgmental, present, focused, disciplined, supportive, and encouraging. And this is actually something I really want my son to understand, is that you don't have to be a pushover to be kind.
Mm-hmm. No, please do that, because that was what my kind of definition when I was younger is that I give everyone else what they want, and then they're going to be nice to me.
Which, guess what, is a wounded feminine
exactly
trait.
It's a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, the wounded feminine is actually really kind of interesting. I'm not going to be in a whole other podcast. I could talk for an hour about that.
Which one of you two wants to go next, or if you want to engage this, Gary?
I mean, like, I definitely think there's something to be said about, just like you're trying to portray something. I mean, for me, like, I'm like a natural introvert. Like, I was just raised, like in a household to where, like, you didn't really talk to the neighbors, like you didn't really have like outside friends, like you didn't really stay the night, like other people's houses. And I mean, like, it wasn't until I got older, that like people told me that, like, oh, like you seem like you're arrogant, or you're like a badass or something like that. But it was just, I was just so, hurt, and then basically just like tarnished just by like other people's energies and just how people had like treated me. So I was just always trying to put off like a shield of toughness. And like on the last podcast, like I talked about wearing my shoulder pads and my armor to bed, and like I never took that off. Like I'd go to bed with it and I'd wake up.
Wait,
with
literally
that.
Or metaphorically?
Not literally. No, like I wasn't wearing like a helmet.
I really wanted to see his shield.
Right. I took off the cup at least, but
huge iron cup I wore.
But yeah, I mean, like the thing about it is that's something like that I want to work on too, And like the last time we met, like I came up and I give you guys hugs, goodbye and stuff. And for me, like, just I need to be doing that more. And that's why, like, I know the statistic about you need to be hugging people, this amount, because for me, like, I never really had hugs and stuff like that. Like growing up, like my like birthday like consisted of me coming home from school, and like there'd be like a cupcake and some like socks like on the table or something. So like for me, like birthdays have never been big, and my birthday just passed, and I didn't I didn't even tell
Both of
anybody.
these guys are like, what?
Yeah. Like October 18th, and like I didn't
Same
tell.
birthday as my mom.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And just for me, like only like my close friends like know my birthday, and I just like it's not like on my Facebook, it's not on anything, because that's just how it was. And just for me, like that's something that I'm trying to work on, because I feel like it's important for me to, you know, show the other side to my son, you know, because
So that like
And
supportive,
for you too.
yeah, and for me.
that supportive, encouraging is part of the healthy masculine on here, and maybe it's more of a challenge to be supportive and encouraging yourself, because once you're at that place where you're doing it yourself, it just kind of comes out at you. You know,
I'm like super hard on myself. I'm super tough. I just think that, you know, I can always do more. I can always work more hours. I can always, you know, make more money. I can always, you know, do more for this person or that person. And for me, you know, it's just about embracing love and like embracing change and, you know, failure, and just, you know, trying just to be more, you know, better with people and stuff like that. And I just think, you know, that's why I'm thankful for this podcast too, because it's already taught me, you know, so much just being around you guys and stuff like that. And, you know, like I'm excited to see what happens in the future.
I have a challenge for you.
I don't like challenges.
Yes, you do. It's okay.
I'm triggered again.
The supportive, encouraging part of yourself. A method that I had learned through therapy was having the conversation with my younger self, like imagining that conversation of like being supportive and encouraging of your younger self can allow you to be that more for yourself. And it really is true. Once you fill that cup for yourself, it just overflows to everyone else. And it's like, if you want to be that for other people, be it to yourself first. And it's like, if you have a hard time doing that, just think like let's say you forgot to do the dishes one day and you're annoyed with yourself because now you've got dishes and dinner to cook, and now you're like blah blah blah. It's like, imagine your younger self should have done the dishes and they didn't. What would you say to him?
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, you know, it sounds so simple, but it's so freeing to be like, I'm really hard on myself. Like, I was busy today. Like, I had a lot going on. Like,
but yeah,
you know,
there's definitely something to be said about, you know, showing empathy and like love, like toward your younger self, and thinking about, because sometimes, you know, like I just talked to my therapist, and I just said, you know, like sometimes, you know, like when I was older, like I found myself thinking, oh, you know, why didn't I stand up for myself when I was 10 or 12 or whatever? And I was
because you were 10 and 12.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I just didn't get it, you know, and I just think, you know, through the help of therapy and reading and stuff like that, like you really understand that you have to love your younger self, and that's how you know, can gain love for yourself and for others and stuff like that. And so the fact you said that is great. I love that.
Cool.
Well, and you brought up what we have done for you. I'm going to give you just a quick peek into what you've done for me. You have sparked a major conversation at the dinner table with my family about your uncle and the what happened on the football field. And with my counselor, you sparked a conversation about the armor, because I too wear the armor. And so I want you to know, and I have every day thought about the interactions that you had. And the reason why is because I've lived my experiences, but to understand that you have gone through that and how that relates to me, I've really, really tried to, and I'm not trying to it frankly isn't about you. It's about me understanding you and appreciating that you have gone through that and you've survived it, and now you're trying to help other people. And you've helped us. I mean, we've spent an hour and a half together, but you really have. I mean, because you've broadened my mind. And in the end, at the end of all of this, that's what I want. I want us to be more open and more engaged with each other so that we're better. And Genevieve really has, I mean, she's got the lists and all that, but that's really what this is all about. If it's reduced down, it's how we can open up and be better to ourselves so that we're better for each of us. Now it's Mike's turn.
I don't think I'm doing anything wrong right now.
No, you don't get off that easy.
No, for me, I hide behind humor, I guess. But like, I don't know, this year and a half it really has been an awakening for myself with learning about myself. I've actually written a letter in my journal to my younger self, and
Wow.
I mean, it'll open you up where you're like, damn, and it brought me to tears.
Yeah.
Just talking to my younger self, because I'm like, or I had to do one to my dad when if I imagine my dad as he was like a 10-year-old, writing a letter to him, like what to look forward to, or even Hunter.
Wow.
But I think the thing I really need to focus on is still not shutting down and isolating, still reaching out to my support people, because what I like to do is isolate and just withdraw. And I look forward to this because I have to talk. I can't just sit here behind a microphone and not say anything.
Doesn't work.
No,
I was like,
as a
Will was like,
co-host-
absolutely not.
as a co-host, that's
Yeah.
you're not hosting, you're just sitting.
Yeah.
But
We don't
I
need to
do
hear
look-
what I have to say about you either, son.
I do like coming here and hearing your story and yours, and having Genevieve here, and just being open. It's more freeing and healing for my soul. So just a continuation of that. I want to really look into that Enneagram,
Yes.
It's fascinating.
because I
Absolutely.
did
3
when I looked
years
it
it has
up.
captured my attention, blew my mind. In fact, my podcast, we did 4 months focus on it. We had Enneagram coaches on Thursday, Enneagram coaches. I mean, it's bonkers. Like, there are people that specified just the Enneagram coaching for business.
That's awesome. I've
Yeah.
never even heard of that before.
No, and what we're going to do is I'm going to get that info from you, and I'm going to
Yeah.
put links on the website
Yeah.
under resources and on the show notes for this, because we have a resources page,
Yeah.
and I want to continue to add to those so that everyone has the opportunity to learn about it and have a place where they can go to it, whether it's on the website or whatever it might be. It's at
Just
least
heads up, though,
memorialized.
this is not one of those things where you take a quiz and it pumps out a number,
Yeah, no,
because the Enneagram is actually learn about all the numbers, and then you will find a number that you're like, yeah, that's me. That's totally me. However, there are some numbers where they're like, I could be this number, or I could be that number. And it takes some self-exploration and some learning about the Enneagram before you can be like, yeah, I'm totally that number. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm a 2, because the title is the hostess. And I was like, yeah, I love people, and I love, caring for other people. But okay, you read the bad parts about each number, and that's how you'll know. You'll be the first one that you go, and then you just feel really gross about. That's your number
Really?
every time.
How long do you
funny.
think it takes to take that? Sorry.
And not long at all. Like, you can read like a quick brief overview of each one, and you'll pretty much catch it pretty quick. Like each one is very specific, and so you'll be like, like my which is funny because like my husband, he's a 5, and he was like, I'm not a 5, because 5s are like total book nerds. Like, they're huge on information. They tend to be really introverted. They usually aren't very social, and that is like the opposite of my husband, but we learned that he's a 5, but because that subtype we were talking about, he's a counter subtype. He doesn't on the outside look like a 5, but what's important to him is the Enneagram 5 traits. And I was like, it took him a hot second. And he was also like, don't put me in a box. Like, he was like, he's like, don't put me in a box. Like, I am a unique person. And I was like, we all are unique people, but you can learn something from this. And over time, he's like, yeah, damn, like that. Okay. Like, it made him look at things that he hadn't considered before, or it gave him permission to enjoy the things he likes enjoying. He went, yeah, actually, I do really enjoy taking in information, and like I love being a niche expert at something, and like, but people from the outside are like, yeah, you're a jack of all trades. And he's like, yeah, but he will like laser focus on something for like years at a time, but nobody knows that about him unless you're close to him.
I like your husband.
He's a cool
at
dude.
the all-star picnic after it was over.
He said the same thing about you. He still
Yeah,
has your business card.
Yeah, if you want any houses, let me
Yeah,
know.
here we go. We got the every episode. Mike's a real estate broker, so get out there and give him a call.
No, I enjoyed him. I would love to hang out with him more often.
I told him, I was like, you
honestly,
should
I'd
be
like
on
to
this.
have him come on.
Yeah, I think he would be really a great conversationalist. I think I got another mic too. So
I have 8
Quite a
more.
few.
So I wanted to get your take on what we said from the female perspective on a grander scale with men.
Yeah.
Is this something that you see? I mean, you know us a little bit now. You know Mike the best out of the 3 of us, but men in general, do you see that these things are fairly prevalent with them, or that there are other traits that you see that are more prevalent? like whether it's anger, whether it's the need to be right.
And I think that was also what was helpful with the Enneagram is that there's different levels of health. There's like unhealthy to like pretty healthy, and like within the Enneagram there's 9 levels within each number. And like I can track my maturity in my number. Like I was like, whoa, when I saw that I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And I think that I think there is a problem with it a little bit because there's so much modeled behavior amongst peers from older generations who weren't really given permission to be anything but this one way. You know, you are this, and if you're not, you're garbage, you're trash. And I mean, women go through the same thing, but with men, it's like it's modeled to us in media. It's modeled into us by older generations and
our environments.
The peers that we surround ourselves. I mean, that whole thing of you are the accumulation of the top 5 people you hang out with. I mean, with family, a lot of times you don't get a choice. You have to be around them, you know? And so with men, I would say that there can be a problem with anger, not willing to talk about your feelings. But I find that that's not because they're not willing. It's because they maybe haven't thought about it.
Or to who even to talk to.
Who's safe to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
The safe part is a huge deal.
Right.
Huge.
I felt safe after a year of our meetings, and then that's really what this turned into, is just from our coffee meetings.
And I think it's experience about being exposed to people that you feel safe around to talk to. And there's a lot of men that don't ever have that because they're chasing that success, or they're chasing that achievement, or they're chasing the antithesis of like how they felt as a kid, you know. And so
or running from
that's the key.
And it's like there's a different availability now because of things like podcasting and things like Google and things like, you know, we have so much more at our fingertips, and mental health is such a hot topic right now. But there's just needs to be more conversation for men because it's allowed for women. It's been allowed for women for a long time to talk about your feelings. But for men, it's like that whole feel to deal to heal. Have you heard that phrase before? Like feel, deal, heal is so important. If you can never name your feeling, you can never deal with it to heal it.
Well, you have to be connected, and I would say that's kind of something that I need to work on, is my disconnect, is to be able to get my heart and my head to connect.
Talking.
Because I can logically talk about stuff, but I don't feel it. Like I shut that off. Because it's not. It wasn't
compartmentalized.
Safe.
Like you know, we talk about that.
It wasn't safe to feel it.
And that takes time. So I think it's like, I do see those traits, and I think it's a matter of just taking the time. That's why like long format podcasting, I think, is way better way to go than you're not going to learn about mental health from TikTok. You might get a concept where you're like, that piqued my interest, but you're going to learn from long format, you know?
Well, it's because it's about a connection. I mean, that's the one thing that we've got in common that we're all saying here is we're creating a connection, whether it's with ourselves or with others. We're focusing on that connection so that we can, again, be better for ourselves. And what Mike was saying just a second ago is that trust in the connection takes time to build, which is why this podcast may take time to build a rapport. We keep saying over and over again, you know, send us questions, you know, connect with us some way or another. But it's going to take the listener time to make sure that they're okay with us and that they're in, I hate safe space or anything like that. I really don't like those terms because I don't
come up
like
with another
labels.
Term.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out. We'll be
but
like,
that we're cool. Like we're cool with you being vulnerable with us because we're being very vulnerable with all of you. And it's kind of a natural progression as our relationship moves along, that the relationship that we have with the listener or the reader or whatever it might be, that will grow as well. So
like, I think it's good too, because it's like we all come from different backgrounds.
Oh.
Like we all look different and stuff like that. It's like, you know, like I think we'll be able to expand like on a broader audience and stuff, and you know, we'll show people that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's, you know, it's okay to talk to your friends. You know, it's okay to ask for help and all these different things, and like that's important.
It's also the how-to. That's something I love about podcasting. It's like we talk about the importance of things, but then it's like, okay, well, where do I start? Like, what does it mean to be vulnerable? What is it? You know, it's like, because that's such a hot topic word right now too. Self-care. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Every human being, that's different, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Clipping toenails.
yeah, I know.
No
A
joke.
bath
I
or a
mean,
shower.
It can be, yeah.
we laugh about it, but
Yeah.
that's the thing about exploring other people and other experiences is that I know people that don't shower daily. And that's the way they were brought up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, that works.
Mm-hmm.
I could not do it.
Yeah.
But as long as it's not impacting anyone else in a negative way, that they don't stink or that it's, that's their
Unhealthy,
thing.
yeah.
Exactly. As long as it's not something that's unhealthy, it's not my job to judge it. We're so quick to judge people that are different than us, which goes down the race, the handicap, the sex, whatever it might be. It's that I don't know it, so I must judge it. No. I mean, that's part of the discussion that I had with my kids is when we talked about you being one of 3 or 4 black kids in that school. What's it like to be completely different than everyone else? Because I can tell them that, yes, I look different than everyone else, but I don't look different to them because I'm their dad and I've always looked like this. It wasn't like when I was the new kid in school and, oh shit, he doesn't have a hand. Now we're going to, we've never seen a handicapped person, because I was a short bus person. If you're different looking, then you have a mental retardation. No, I just don't have a hand.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't mean, people ask me if it's my foot. What the fuck? I don't walk around on my hand.
I was like, what?
But that's the kind of thing. I look different.
Mm-hmm.
Gary has dealt with the exact same thing, I'm sure. I mean, you've told us that you have.
Oh, yeah.
When you look different. Genevieve is a woman, so...
And I was like, are you sure you want me to come on your podcast? It's like,
Oh, but that's what... I lean into that.
You made that super clear early on. I was like, okay, cool. I
No,
feel
I-
safe to talk about these things.
Oh,
Let's do it.
absolutely. And Mike's just a
It
normal
would be-
white guy,
it
so...
would Yeah, pretty much. I'm your token white guy.
Exactly. Just what we needed on the podcast. We're like, finally, we found somebody, everyone can get along with.
I cannot wait to figure out what Enneagram number you guys are.
Yeah.
We can have some seriously good conversation around
So
what
are you
you're
going to
learning
be a
about yourself.
regular on the show?
I mean, I don't live far. So
you
Well,
don't.
but to be fair, I did listen to your podcast
Mm-hmm.
and the one that you pointed out and some other ones. You made it clear that you were taking a step back from podcasting and
I
that
was, yeah.
that it was something that you wanted to work through. So, we can talk about that offline
That's
or online.
also the beneficial part of not being the host
Yes,
of
and
the podcast.
producing
Like
and all
I
that.
love podcasting. I love it so much. I'll be back anytime you guys want me on.
Well, I think it's important to have a female perspective for all of the men out there that we do want to connect to, but a level-headed female perspective, and I hope that we all bring a level head to it. But
I'm honored. Thank you for calling me level-headed.
well,
I'll take
but
it.
that's what
Wow.
it is.
It's a little stretch there.
No, sorry, my bad. Okay, hold on. I'll cut that part out. Let me mark that. No, I kid, but it is something that again it draws down the guard of the people that are listening, and that because we're not talking about cars, we're not talking about sports, topical stuff. We're talking about shit that affects people and their families' lives,
Yeah.
and we want to make it better.
We're talking about feelings.
Yeah, feelings. But
the
you know,
important stuff.
that the thing is that there's, when we talk about masculinity and all that, and I think this is a good spot to wrap things up so that we can continue on, because I think that the Enneagram, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Would be a great place to jump off on the next show once Mike gets back, and I know that Gary and I
I'm
will.
excited. You guys have no idea.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that would be a great place to pick up on whether it's toxic masculinity or masculinity in general, and how I think kind of a natural progression for us is how true masculinity, or as Mike and I called it, positive masculinity, which are the traits that you talked about there, how that leads to a fulfilled life, and how, because the negative parts that you were ringing off there, I connected with a number of those, and I know that it's something that I'm continually working on.
it's always there. That's the thing, is like you never move on.
Yeah.
You never do. But it's the awareness. It's
Yes.
the feel to deal to heal. It's like, because shit happens. Like you're in the middle of life and you get smacked with a pandemic, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is like a whole, what do I do? What's this whole situation? I mean, that will happen the rest of your life. So it's not like you've arrived to some destination.
No.
And so knowing that it's like you're always going to be seeing both sides. And honestly, that's been really good for my mental health to be like, okay, that was a trait that I just saw pop up that I hadn't seen in a while. Like, let's evaluate for a second. Let's stop and go, okay, how am I doing? Like that's why I said Monday I did nothing. I did nothing on Monday because I was
discharged.
Yeah, I was like, by Sunday, I was like, okay, I'm descending into a place I don't like because I was like stressed and pressed and I wanted to do all those things. And I told my husband, I was like, honestly, you're probably going to have to deal with me just figuring things out because this is the first time I'm re-engaging to things that I've always loved, but with a different lens. You know, it's like I've learned so much about myself. And in the last 2 years, it's like I haven't been able to like do quote unquote real life with it. So it's like you're always going to see those traits where you're like, ooh, yeah. Or you're going to think it in your head, but you haven't done anything with it. Or it's like that's just part of being human.
Yeah.
You know? The
human condition. We all suffer from it. Well, Gary, do you have any last words that you'd like to say?
So, I mean, for me, like, I kind of just want to say, like, seek help. I mean, like, it's okay to ask if you don't know something, you know? And I think that going back to this again, but I think the dynamic, you know, we have, you know, with race, you know, with a hand or with a regular white guy or a girl.
I love it. Yes.
Like there's so many
Rainbow
things.
Coalition.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many things, you know, we can talk about, and you know, I mean, even, you know, whether it's, you know, how to come up and phrase things or talk about certain things or whatever. I just think that, you know, like I'm very excited for this, and just seek help and ask for help. It's okay.
Absolutely.
Like you don't have to know everything. You
No,
know?
and having that desire to seek the knowledge, it's not about the destination. It's the getting there.
It's the journey.
It's the constant.
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
You have anything that you parting words?
I think parting wisdom is really as you start to go on that inward journey and you start to kind of learn more about yourself, that it's okay to sprint and it's okay to rest. Like there has definitely been times in the last 3 years where I'm like, I'm going to put this down for a second because that was a lot to process, you know, like that was a lot to put through my brain and like integrate into my life. And so be gentle with yourself as you're going inward and you see stuff you don't like, and allow yourself to just ruminate, just simmer in it.
Ruminate and listen.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's right.
Mike?
Final words. Let's see.
You just think about Hawaii, don't you?
Yeah.
He's gone, man.
I got the
They're
sand
already
in my toes and the palm trees.
He's already
blowing.
packed.
Yeah. I'm ready to go.
Mentally and physically.
Right. That's awesome.
I think for me, my final words for this show is, you know, I'm really excited about the Enneagram. I might even start on that tonight and not even wait till
Good plain reading. There's podcasts, there's books. There's so much stuff out there to lean into. Like,
I'll be doing that for sure.
So even if you don't, that one doesn't touch home to you, maybe do another one of the disc tests or the other ones that you guys labeled off or whatever. But
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. But find out a little bit more about yourself, because I think that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all very much for being vulnerable, for bringing the different perspective that we hope the listeners appreciate. And I think next time we'll jump on the Enneagram and we'll work on or kind of check in on how we've challenged ourselves as guys.
I want to know what number you guys are so bad.
will.
Man. No pressure.
Yeah, right. Lots of pressure. As always, you can find us on all the normal podcast channels. Please subscribe, rate, and review at One Hand Man on all the social media. Podcast number 5 dropped today. Check that out. If this one will be released next Tuesday. Tuesday is kind of the day that that's the release date. I think that will work well. And as we look at maybe expanding and whatnot, I want video to be part of this, because I think that...
Oh, man, you're going to make me get ready?
I'm not going to do it in the doily room. I'll tell you that right now.
Hey, I got lights.
You need to get over the doily, bro.
Man, my mom needs to upgrade her house. I'll tell you that.
I like it.
I was like, it's feminine. I'm not mad. Like,
it's terrible.
I'm comfortable.
I hate it.
It is terrible.
I want to go...
Look at the balances on that. Okay. Anyways, let's wrap it up.
Thank you guys very much. Again, I appreciate everyone. Like Gary said, if you need help, get help. We have resources, ManVsMood.com. With that, we gone.